got to be careful too about saying like your vote doesn't matter. You know, that's a different slippery slope. You don't want to not vote. Like that's what America is. That's part of your freedom is you have that vote. And
explain that to Gary, because okay, a lot of people don't know this about Laurie, but he was in the Peace Corps. You were in Ethiopia?
Yeah.
Okay. You explained this to me and it made a lot of sense. Well, you were telling me about how like they don't get to vote over there, and so
not that they don't get to vote. It's you don't. So there's a difference between voting. And it's not to draw any parallels with what recent events we had because it's not even close. But over there, I mean, I had a very close friend that I became very close with. That he was thrown in jail several times. Like this is a dirt floor, like jail cell. Like he was just thrown in jail because he opened his mouth. Not even because he said something they didn't like. He just started talking about stuff. He raised questions. Even just asking questions, they threw him in jail. And so as a part of the process, not just with elections, it was with other things too. It was hard for me to tell him to try to be quiet, you know, because I'm coming from a place where we don't be quiet. We ask questions. We want to know things, you know. I want to tell him that, but
was he an American?
No.
Okay.
And so, I mean, this is throughout his life, and he knows, you know, there's a lot of people that. So my point is, in other countries, they do not have freedom, and so it was something when I came back, I had really never voted before, and after seeing that, it wasn't with a vote or it wasn't anything political with what happened to him. But just from seeing that alone and understanding the rights and privileges that we have here and the freedoms that we truly do have, that vote in and of itself is something that I now cherish because I realize it's something that many countries don't have. Not just with a vote, but being able to just, you know, we have this podcast, we speak our mind. We are able to talk about things. We're able to ask questions. We're able to try to see, you know, what is this side? What is that side? So I know, yeah, there's censorship, there's the cancel culture, but I still don't see a parallel with these other countries that I still see we have freedom.
Now, but how much more is going to keep going the way it's going before we get there? Like, do you honestly think you have the same freedoms now that you did when you came back from that experience in the Peace Corps? And when we're talking about like the votes mattering or not mattering, like, yes, in theory they do, but do you feel like your vote this last election counted? Do you feel you made a difference by voting for Trump?
I mean, I feel like it's not that it's the outcome of the election. It's that I had the ability to do it. And I don't want to make that seem like less than it is. It's just
a lot less of it.
But what if it doesn't mean anything?
That's what I mean.
So you're telling me every single vote at every single level that you cast didn't mean anything?
No, I asked about
your local officials.
President. I asked about
one thing. So my vote isn't one thing. My vote isn't one thing.
Okay,
that's the only vote I cared about. If it weren't for that, to be honest, I don't know if I would have been there.
And I don't agree. I don't agree that only one vote matters. I think even at a smaller scale, at the local level, that's where it matters. If we had different officials that were the election commission that were put into power by people in the local government, we wouldn't have this issue.
Did it matter in Georgia?
We don't have that.
Did Georgia people's votes matter on the runoff? At that local level?
What about it? What about the runoff? Do you think the runoff they changed their votes?
100%.
With a microscope that was put on them?
It was the exact same outcome as election night for the presidency.
He does think that. Yeah.
They stopped counting votes. Both Republican senators were in the lead. Miraculously, when we woke up the next morning, the Democrats had overcame the difference and it was too far gone for them. You know, it was over with. They came back and won. Exactly.
But that's not how the runoff happened.
It's 100%.
The Democrats were in the lead. Yeah, in the runoff, the Democrats were in the lead. I remember watching it.
Pull it up, young Lordy. Can you pull that up, young Lordy?
Democrats were both losing when they stopped counting the night of the election. The next morning, they had taken the lead after they stopped counting. The exact same thing that happened with the president.
That's not how I remember it.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching the updates at night, and maybe I just stayed up later. I don't know.
But I mean,
it wasn't like they stopped counting and released batches in the morning like we had seen in 4 different states. That was not the same with the runoff.
It was the same thing. It was exactly the same thing. They stopped counting. They were both winning. Next morning, what do you know? Came back and won.
So you're saying, and I'm saying it's bigger than the president. It's bigger than the Senate. It's bigger than the House. It's bigger than that. The vote is bigger than that.
Lordy, it sounds like what you're saying is that if we took the time to make sure that the people we put in the small forms like local government, then we wouldn't have people running our election, like the election process, who aren't trustworthy.
Correct.
Well, who's running? Who runs the elections?
The election commission. And who's put into power by the election commissions? We don't vote them into power. We vote the people that put them in power.
Local government.
Yes.
Who decides we're using Dominion machines?
Your local government.
And where do they get their options from? Why is it that Pelosi and them are so highly invested in the Dominion machines, and that's just coincidentally what we use for our elections?
Well, we use something different here. We use ES&S.
I'm saying that, like,
so someone here locally made that decision to use ES&S, not Dominion.
I'm saying to your point, take Nebraska out of it. Use the vast majority of states, or the large amount of states that use Dominion machines to count their elections, to count their ballots at state levels, at local, county, and city levels, like you're saying, that are owned by Schumer and Pelosi and those guys. But it all starts at
I don't think they're own. They own a portion, which is like pennies of those companies.
It's an investment.
Yeah, like we probably own them as well. If you have a 401k, your shit is so diversified and spread out that you probably own stuff in things that you don't even know or wouldn't want them to be. So my second part of that is, yes, Dominion is in many states, and a big part of that is contracts are won by different companies based off of different things. Sometimes it's lowest offer, sometimes it's somebody knows somebody, and that's how things run. That's how business runs. It's a business. Is it public? Do we want it to be public? Do we want the government to run the elections?
They do.
In full. The government isn't Dominion. The government isn't the machines. The government isn't the staff that are running it.
Some of the higher ups in government have some of the biggest majority. Like, you're talking about mutual funds and stuff in 401ks where you own fractions of this.
Yeah, I'm just talking stocks in general. They own portions. They own portions from funds.
Percentages owned in all this stuff. Like you talked about, like we've talked before about how when Trump became president, he couldn't own any of this stuff. And he was doing this, he was helping his people. And if he even had a past tie to something that was like a black mark, because now he's trying to pat his own pocket when he's done, or his kids' pockets, or his buddies' pockets, or whatever else. They come back and they show that Pelosi and Schumer,
because they've been doing it.
Ownership.
That's what politics is. You know people. You make money by knowing people.
Counts our votes at multiple states on every level. And it's like, well, people own business things or whatever. Like, come on, man.
That's still private.
This is why we're where we're at.
Why is it not, Lordy? Why is it not?
Then you need to have competition and start another company and be competitive with them and push them out of the sector.